Hello all, hope you're having a great day today. So today we're continuing our conversation on chapter 3, creative problem solving and decision making. This is part 2. Model consists of 6 steps. So each step is presented in detail in separate sections after the overview section. In the sports world, you will not always proceed in the conveniently sequenced manner implied in this depiction. At any step in the process, you might find yourself returning to a prior step to make changes. Let's say you've gotten to implementation, but it isn't going well. Perhaps this time you simply need to tweak the implementation plan, but other times you need to backtrack and select a new alternative or even change your original objective. A problematic implementation may reveal that you haven't defined the problem precisely enough, and you may have to return to square one. So step 1 is define the problem or opportunity. Step 2, set your objectives and criteria. Step 3, generate alternatives. And step 4, select the most feasible alternative. Step 5, implement the decision. And step 6, control the results. Problems can be classified in terms of how the decision is structured, the conditions in which the decisions are made, and the decision model to be used based on the structure and condition. Decision structure can be categorized as programmed or non-programmed. Non-programmed decisions are recurring or routine situations in which the decision maker should use decision rules or organizational policies and procedures to make the decision. Here's a typical decision rule for Dick's Sports Goods. Order X number of Titleist golf balls every time stock reaches level Y. So it's not necessary to follow all of the steps of the decision model. Non-programmed decisions are significant but non-recurring and non-routine situations in which the decision makers should use the decision model. To qualify as significant, a decision must be expensive, i.e. purchasing your major assets, or having major consequences, such as launching a new product. Adidas made a non-programmed decision when it purchased Reebok. Non-programmed decisions should take longer to make than programmed decisions. Note that decisions fall along a continuum for totally programmable to totally non-programmable, with many combinations of the two types in between. Once you have defined the problem, your next step is to set an objective that states the end result, to solve the problem or capitalize on the opportunity. In Chapter 4, you will learn how to set effective objectives. One goal of Adidas is to reduce purchasing costs. This will help the company reduce overall production costs. When writing an objective, you should also specify the criteria for achieving the objective. Criteria are the standards that must be met to accomplish the objective. It is a good idea to distinguish between must and want criteria. Must criteria have to be met to achieve the objective, whereas want criteria are desirable but not absolutely necessary. Thus, every acceptable alternative, and there may also be several that are acceptable in the initial stages of the decision, has to meet the must criteria. Thereafter, you must decide which alternative meets the most want criteria. With satisfying, you select the first acceptable alternative. With optimizing, you try to choose the best possible option, one that meets as many want criteria as possible. It is also often important to weigh criteria, as some of the must and want criteria are more important than others. With simple programmed decisions, the objectives and the criteria have already been set. Therefore, you don't have to implement steps 2 through 4 of the decision-making model. However, with important non-programmed decisions, you should implement all 6 steps in the decision-making model. Suppose your coach has quit and you must hire a new one. Your objective is to hire a coach by June 30th, 2023. You must include, among other things, 3 years experience as a coach. Your want criterion is that the coach be from a minority group. It could be female or white in an inner city. That is your want to hire a minority employee, but will not hire someone who is significantly less qualified than a majority applicant. In this situation, you would optimize the decision following the 6 steps of the model rather than satisfies. We discuss the criteria again later in the chapter. After you and your team have defined the problem and set objectives and criteria, it's time to generate alternatives. Often there is more than one way to solve a problem, so don't shortchange yourself. Explore your alternatives. Base your alternatives on facts, not just opinions. With the program decision, step 3 can be skipped because the alternative has already been selected and stated as policies, procedures, and rules. However, with non-program decisions, the time and effort invested in generating alternatives pays off. In this section, we examine innovation and creativity, the use of information and technology to generate alternatives, and group methods for generating creative alternatives. Creativity is a way of thinking that generates new solutions to problems and new ways to approach opportunities. It's about looking at and seeing things differently. Ever been told to think outside the box? Creativity is about coming up with new ideas, but they are useless if they are not implemented through innovation. And innovation alters what is established by introducing something new. 2 classifications of innovation are product innovation, new things including products, and process innovation is new way of doing things. Creativity is needed, but it is essentially useless if it's not implemented. As you solve problems and take advantage of opportunities, you will often ask yourself, how much information do we need and where should we get it? Unfortunately, there are no simple answers. The more important the decision, the more information you need generally. However, too much information can paralyze the decision-making process. That is, the decision becomes too complex and you never get to the best choice. So, tech and data are your decision tools, not your boss. Therefore, it helps to know what constitutes useful information. Useful information has 4 characteristics: timeliness, quality, completeness, and relevance. Timely information is information that you get in time to make your decision. High quality information is accurate, whereas false information misleads and results in bad decisions. Complete information is, of course, extensive, no holes, no gaps, and relevant information pertains to the group's objectives. Having a clear objective and good criteria helps you to check irrelevant information. So timeliness, can we get what we need in time? Completeness, is our information complete, or is there more out there that we need to dig for? Relevance is our information relevant? And quality, is the information correct? Decisions are made in an environment of uncertainty, risk, and uncertainty. These elements are called decision-making conditions. When you make decisions in a certain environment, you know the outcome of each alternative in advance, so you can usually take quick action. When you make decisions in a risky environment, you don't know each outcome in advance, but you can assign probabilities of occurrence to each one. In an uncertain environment, lack of information or knowledge makes the outcomes unknown, or accurate probabilities can't be made. Top-level managers tend to make more risky and uncertain decisions than lower-level managers do. Although risk and uncertainty can never be accurately predicted, they can be reduced with information or big data. The key is for event decision makers working in an increasingly fast-paced environment to plan for the event come game time by having risk assessments and contingency plans. And the sport world, conditions can't always be neatly categorized as certain, risky, or uncertain. As shown in figure 3.3, the conditions are on a continuum. Left end of the continuum is looking at the quantitative techniques, the objective, which is oftentimes your maximum use of math or information. The right end of the continuum is your cost-benefit analysis. So it's subjective, and there's minimum use of math in that particular situation. Like brainstorming, steps 3 and 4 of the decision-making process are separate steps. There is a good reason for this. Generating and evaluating alternatives at the same time tends to kill creativity and often leads to satisficing. So after generating evidence-supported alternatives, you analyze them using analytical thinking. You want to select the best alternative, but notice that step 4 says the most feasible. The most feasible alternative may not always be the best alternative because we have limited resources. For example, NCAA Division III teams have limited budgets for coaches, so these teams generally can't attract and hire coaches with the same experience as those hired by Division I and pro teams. So they hire the most feasible coaches who are often internal employees, including team graduates who know the college athletic program. As you and your team evaluate alternatives, think forward and try to predict possible outcomes by synthesizing information. Use an ethical guide to consider the ethics of each alternative. Use the objectives and criteria you developed in step 2 of the decision-making process to critique each alternative. Then compare how each alternative measures up against your other alternatives. To assist you in this process, become familiar with, if not adept at, 2 types of techniques: the quantitative analysis and cost-benefit analysis that we just talked about. To get you started, we present a brief overview here. The quantitative techniques use mathematical analysis to assess alternative solutions. So your Microsoft Excel sheets and other software make this process easier. The field of sport management is increasingly using quantitative methods. Recall our MLB Moneyball example and the increasing use of statistics or big data in baseball and other sports at all levels. The break-even analysis involves forecasting the volume of sales and the cost of production. The break-even point or payback occurs at the level where no profit or loss results. As a manager at a skating rink, you buy a pair of skates for $50. Each time you rent the skates, you get $5. How many rentals does it take to break even? Easy answer, right? It takes 10 rentals to pay back the $50. And every rental after that is profitable. So your break-even analysis is commonly used to determine the number of tickets that need to be sold to cover the cost of an event. Decisions can be made, but not implemented successfully. Have you ever made a New Year's resolution, like to lose weight, but you didn't succeed? Why? A key reason is not developing a detailed plan to achieve your objective. So once you make a decision, you need to commit to meeting the objective and developing a plan to achieve it. Your plan of action should include a schedule for implementation. You also need to get the necessary resources and coordinate them with your current resources to implement the plan that will achieve the objective. Communicating the plan to all employees is also critical. Delegating is key to smooth implementation. You may need multiple implementation plans. Adidas, for example, developed a plan to sell tailor-made golf clubs, a plan to advertise them, and a plan to distribute the clubs at the retail level. Control methods should be developed as part of your plan. Establish checkpoints to monitor progress to determine whether the chosen alternative is solving the problem. If not, consider action. You will learn how to control in chapters 13 and 14. More important, if the implementation continues to go poorly, don't remain with your decision. That is, change your tack. For example, if a team is losing, it often tries different plays and players in various positions to score and win. If you are off track to achieve your objective, you don't want to give up too soon and miss it, but you also don't want to be a victim of the escalation of commitment, not admitting to having made a bad decision and staying too long with a plan that is not working. We all face loss aversion, the feeling that the pain of losing would be greater than the joy of winning. Do you have a tendency to stay with a plan even when you get bad news by wasting more resources and throwing good money after bad? Why? Is it because you don't like to lose and don't want to admit that your plan is not effective at meeting the objective, even to yourself? Do you know anyone who will never admit to making a mistake? When you make a poor decision, sometimes you just have to admit it and quickly change plans to take corrective action. You may need to go back to prior steps in the decision-making model. You also need to learn from your mistakes so that you don't repeat them. The good news is that poor decisions and failure can often be rectified and may even lead to greater success. Sometimes taking the star player out of the game leads to the substitute contributing to victory. The following is an example of a corrective action in the NFL. The NFL has denied that the league had a problem with player health due to concussions. Sports media such as ESPN, Outside the Lines, Sports Illustrated, and the PBS Frontline all reported the NFL was in denial about player concussions. After settling a lawsuit with 4,500 former players, the league has implemented comprehensive corrective actions. The first action was to make the current games safer. The second is to invest in research on brain injuries. The third action is to develop youth football education and training programs. It will be several years before Adidas managers can determine whether their decision to diversify into new fashion-oriented sneakers was a good strategic move. Although moving into tailor-made golf equipment didn't go as well as planned, the fashion sneaker market appears to have a much stronger fit with Adidas' traditional lines of athletic wear. As we bring this chapter to a close, you should understand your decision-making style and how to use the decision-making model when making important non-programmed decisions. Define the problem, set objectives and criteria, generate alternatives, select the most feasible alternative, and then implement the decision and control the results. So this is a chapter summary. Ideally, after this chapter, you should be able to describe how meeting objectives and solving problems and making decisions are connected. Managers are responsible for setting and achieving organizational objectives. And when they don't meet those objectives, problems result. When problems exist, decisions must be made about what, if any, action must be taken. Explain how management functions, decision-making, and problem-solving relates. When managers plan, organize, lead, and control, they make decisions. When they are not proficient in these functions, they are part of the problem, not part of the solution. You should be able to list the 6 steps in decision making. So define the problem or opportunity, set your objectives and criteria, generate your alternatives, select the most feasible alternative, implement your decision, and control the results. It's a feedback loop. Identify programmed and non-programmed decisions and recognize certain risky and uncertain business conditions. Programmed and non-programmed decisions differ in how often they recur, whether they're routine, and their level of significance. Non-programmed decisions are non-recurring, non-routine, and highly significant decisions. Programmed decisions are recurring, routine, and less significant decisions. Know when to use the different decision models and when to make decisions as a group or as an individual. Use the rational model with group decision making when a non-programmed decision must be made, and high risk or uncertain conditions. Use the bounded rationality model when you work solo on program decisions made in low risk and certain conditions. Note that this is a general guide. There are always exceptions to the rule. Decisions are made in environmental conditions that are certain. You know the outcome of each alternative or risky. You can assign probabilities of success or failure to the outcomes, or highly uncertain probabilities of success or failure to the outcomes. You should be able to state the difference between an objective and a must and a want criteria. An objective is the end result you must want from your decision. Must criteria are the requirements that an alternative has to meet to be selected. Want criteria are desirable, but they're not absolutely necessary. Explain how creativity and innovation differ. Creativity is a way of thinking that generates new ideas, while innovation is the implementation of those new ideas. And then describe the 3 stages in the creative process. So the 3 stages are preparation, incubation, taking a break from the problem, letting your subconscious work on it, and illumination. Recognize when the light bulb goes on, and 3, evaluation, critique your idea to make sure it is a good one. And explain how quantitative and cost-benefit analysis facilitate selecting alternatives. Quantitative analysis uses math to objectively choose the alternative with the highest value. Cost-benefit analysis combines subjective analysis with some math, although alternatives don't necessarily have to be quantified to be compared, as in the pros and cons approach. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to talking with you again. Take care.